I'm Khan and you're watching The Wrath of Minis, and today we are going to be painting terrain, the funnest thing in the world to paint. Actually, it's probably one of the most stress-free things to paint, and that's why I really like painting terrain. It's just one of those things in which that you can play around, mess with, kind of, don't care about what's going on, because terrain can be gritty and grimy and messy and will still work on the tabletop setting in a cool way. Finding a right approach to painting terrain, I think, is the key part of it. Perhaps like anything in the world of painting, the right approach just makes life so much easier. I'm going to just talk about how I think about it, why I painted the way I did it, and utilizing a different type of paint, oil paint. Now I know not everyone will have oil paint. You can utilize enamels for the same sort of thing. AK Interactive has a bunch of stuff in regards to weathering products. Weathering products are amazing. They're so much fun to use because of don't have to care so much about what you're doing. Obviously you need to care, but you just don't need to be like, oh, I've got to be so fine with my details and stuff, You can just play, and I kind of like that aspect of it all. For me, in this particular example, I wanted to be a heavily weathered thing. And I was kind of thinking like Star Wars, Tatooine kind of ordeal, like sandy place. To the elements, it kind of has gone a bit to shit, truthfully, and everything's really, really rusty. Rust, you could do it in different ways. You could paint it so that you get your original color. So let's say the whole thing started out as this crane, for instance, a yellow crane, and then you could do all the rust effects on top of it. Or you can go another way. You could do all the rust effects first and then paint on top of it. Two ways about going about it. I'm going to show you the latter. Now, I wasn't going for yellow, I was just going to go for something else, but you'll see how I approach what I'm doing. So I started with the rust effect. The rust effect is just using pretty much three colors. I'm using a very dark reddish brown color. You're not even dry brushing this, you're getting wet paint and you're just going everywhere all over it, pretty fast, pretty quickly. You're being heavy-handed and you're not really caring too much about all these things. It's nice to keep the real deep dark recesses, dark, but the base color that we're getting it is going to pretty much do that. Some of the black can show through, it's fine, it doesn't matter. Once you've done that, with this sort of very dark brown color, dark reddish brown, we're moving to a more red color. So I'm using a red ochre color at this mix, and then I'm going to go to a yellow ochre, and I'm going to mix between those two, red and yellow. So you're starting with three colors. You're doing your dark brown, you're getting your sort of mid-tone red brown, and then you're going to go for your kind of orangey, yellowy effect. And that's what you're looking for when you're trying to create the idea of rust. And so we're working in slightly smaller areas of each one of those colors, building them up all throughout the model. And eventually you get like this very messy effect. And it looks like you want it to. It looks like how I want it to look like. Just little things in different places, feels kind of just gritty and grimy. And I'm thinking, that's cool, it's gonna be really nice. But we're not done. We're not anywhere close to being done. Once you've gotten your rust effect feeling like you want it, I'm going to go with metallic paint here, utilizing a dark metal, dark silver color from Monument Paints. And I'm going to take a regular just flat brush. I'm not even using the round ones because I don't care too much here. Take off a bit of the paint, but not even too much of it. And I'm just going to be catching all of the edges. This is such a quick, such a fast, wonderful method, because what you're getting is that you're getting the rust in sort of the crevices areas, and then all the raised areas are being plucked to be made silver. So you're just getting this nice effect of silver and rust. And you go throughout the entire model, sort of dry brushing the silver into the model's area, everywhere that you want it to be silvery, Eventually, once I've kind of got the main silver down, I'll go with a slightly brighter silver, and I will be a little bit more careful on how I'm picking things out. So I'm using a round brush now and just going over some of those even finer areas, just being more careful, just making sure that I'm getting the really highest raised areas. Just like that, at that point in time, you could be pretty happy with the effect that you're getting. Getting nice sort of brownish, reddish kind of colors, and you get in the silver that's kind of being all on the top side of things, all the highlights of stuff. But we're going to take it a step further. We are going to utilize oil paints. And the oil paints are going to give us the means of getting even more rusted effect going down. So pretty much you're just going to do an oil wash. Now, if you don't know what an oil wash is, it's really straightforward. So you're just taking oil paint and you're taking a white spirit or an odorless spirit. You're taking the two, you're mixing them together. You're a bit more odorless spirit than paint, for instance, until it becomes like a wash consistency. Wash. And then you take your brush in there, you put it, and then you just plot it into the crevices. And because of the capillary effect, it goes all into the recesses, creating a lot of really nice distinction and pop to the model. And you just pretty much go all over the model wherever you want to go about it. And you can also just put like little dots in places and leave them alone. Then you take a turquoise color, because why not? Oxidization, stuff like that. And we go back over the exact same thing. We don't do it quite as much of a wash this time around. We have it a bit more solidly, and we put the dots into different places all throughout the model. And once you have gotten like those dots down, what you'll do is you'll take more of the thinner this time, dry off from your brush a little bit, and pull the oil paint. Because oil has a lot more working time than like acrylic paint, you can work and play with it afterwards. So it's a great weathering tool, because you go, oh, I've got too much in this one area. Just take your brush and then you just drag it, pull it, play with it until you make the like a dragging effect, like the liquid had formed and then it was pooling, and then it just sort of goes down along the wall or along the facing. So it totally sells the effect and just makes everything really stand out. With a bit of turquoise, boom, there you're done. I'm done. I'm like calling this quits. No more. So I did the same thing across a whole bunch of different models. For the next part, which is like the kind of, it's not the power part, I don't know exactly what it is. It could be like a really big exhaust system. I am doing a lot of stippling. Stippling is probably the main tool, the main thing that I'm utilizing, and you can see it really clearly on the this exhaust system thing that's going on. It's probably like a power generator exhaust stuff. I'm leaving some of the black alone, and the original color I'm going more brown, adding oranges and yellows on top of it. It's really trying to create that rusted effect, because it doesn't matter how it really looks, because I'm going to go back over it with some silver. So before I even get to the silver, I started utilizing a bit of blue. The blue is to create more shadow in certain areas. I just wanted to darken certain things, so I did a little bit of blue in places, just dulled some stuff down, and eventually I'll go with the silver. But before I do that, I wanted to try something out this time around. And I've not really used it before, but hopefully you'll see it and tell me what you think about it. So I've obviously got this rust effect going on. I'm like, okay, great. And I'm going to be utilizing this stuff called heavy chipping from AK Interactive. So this is the first time I've ever used this stuff before. I've always wanted to. I've owned it for a little while, but now's the time to do it. And heavy chipping, it is interesting. It's like you use your airbrush, you spray onto the place, and you put a paint on top of it, and then when you take water or something like that, it reactivates the paint underneath it, causing the paint that you've put on top to come off. All right, so let's see how it works. You need for it to dry first, and then you can go on top of it. So you can see I'm starting to spray white on top of this thing. It's looking pretty good. I need to be somewhat careful because I've only sprayed the heavy chipping stuff over the general area of this panel, but not everywhere. Obviously with this type of thing, you need to have pretty good control with your airbrush. You need to feel quite confident and comfortable with it, but hopefully the more that you practice, the better and more comfortable you feel. After I painted it white, I actually went back over it with a slight grayish white color, just an off-white, just to help give the sense of a gradient that's going on with the white itself, plus to make things a little bit more cohesive across the whole thing. But the real main moment of truth, which just happened, you can kind of see it, first dots, and here is just a gentle brush that I'm going over with, seeing if any of the stuff will come off. And is it? A little bit. You can kind of see that certain areas are starting to appear, at least on the riveted section. But really we want the main front area. What's going on here, people? I'm using an awful brush, you may see. And I'm like, this is taking forever. It's not quite how I anticipated it working. All right, I'm like, okay, finger. And then I got a cotton swab out and got some liquid on that and seeing if I could get it to work more effectively. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to go to a metal tool this time and see if I can kind of scrape it off slightly, because it's kind of reactivated. Maybe I can create more lines, more weird, like, you know, weathering effects and stuff like that. Should do the trick. It was a bit more complicated. I definitely need more practice with it. But the idea is still there, and it's definitely functioning. But I went back to the Q-tip, and I'm going a bit more vigorously with it. I think I need to get a kind of special Q-tips, which they don't like fall apart so quickly, to make this more effective. Or maybe a sponge. Probably a sponge would be a good idea. Just a small piece, and like dabbing at it and like being able to pull something that is like, you can be kind of abrasive, but also holds its shape and form would be useful. Again, I'm just, you know, playing with it, scraping things, trying to create more lines, trying to make it more visually interesting. But I was like, for the second side of it, I'm going to go much more heavily aggressive with it, because I'm like, this is taking longer than I anticipated. My patience was running out. But I think it looks quite cool. I think the effect looks pretty solid. That rust color comes out from underneath it. The white looks like is on top of it, which makes a lot of sense. Almost like the rust has gotten underneath the paint, and now that paint is peeling off. And I just think, oh, that's awesome. You can actually go back over these things for quite a long time. So the reactivation, you have quite a bit of playing time. You don't have to feel particularly rushed to go at it. Once I got all the weathering done relatively, and I felt pretty good, I went over everything with the dry brush and utilized the metal, same thing, dark silver, got all the areas that I was looking for. I went to a couple brighter spots just to make sure. Then I got my oil wash out again, picked out all the details, utilizing turquoise oil wash, and going through that, then pulling all the paint down, dragging it into those places. I like to use a little extra other colors here and there, so I started using some red in spaces, just trying to make it look more interesting and put different colors in different places. So the paint and the rust underneath it looks great. It still looks good. However, if you really want to spend extra time, you can make it look better. And the way you'll do that to make it look better is to make the separation between the rust and the paint itself. So if you've got the patience and the time, you take a white paint, it could be pretty much pure white or just like an off-white color, and you go very, very, very carefully near where the paint and the rust meet. And so you're just creating these little lines, little spots, little dottings, stippling in places all across the area to make sure that the separation exists. And it really helps make it pop, which is just very nice. You can also do the opposite. You can also add a little black or darker dots on the other side with the rusted section to help create better distinction. But I just wanted to do it with the white and went around picking under things and generally putting it on the underside of where there are like gaps and gashes so that it showed up better. So it was like the glint, the light was catching it at the bottom side or on the top side. And the cool thing about that is that the whole technique of everything that I've just done was applied exactly the same, nothing different to all of the models that I painted for the Nachmund Kill Team set. So I just effectively worked through it all, did all the same stuff, and did each bit by bit, building it all up and hopefully get a really cohesive looking thing. So I was like quite happy with it. And it's interesting because you don't really need many oil colors for it. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm really only using 3. If you've got other ones, that's cool and you can play around with them. But the 3 that I'm using is a turquoise, like a red Mars kind of color, and a deep dark like yellow or like orange. You get more of a yellow, and then you can mix them. You can mix the red and the yellow together to create more of an orange if you need it to be. And then you've got this turquoise for that sort of oxidization effect. And you can kind of add that throughout. You just need a bit of mineral spirit or odorless spirit that you can utilize to create your wash, and then you can put them all into the recesses. And it's just a really fun, simple way of doing it. And you get this really lovely weathered effect stuff, especially with the AK Interactive weathering business that allows the paint to come off, which is just kind of awesome. And you can do pretty much this entire thing in a couple of days. Hopefully you guys found that fun and interesting. It's a really straightforward process, but it gets a really good effect on the board when you get this kind of thing done. Just utilizing a little bit of oils and some dry brushes and some of your big brushes, you can kind of make this terrain just really interesting and, you know, cool and fun and rusty. I had a lot of fun painting them. I got them done pretty quickly, and I think they're good. They look good and they're effective, and they're going to be great on the board. I'm also going to be doing this hopefully for some Kill Team playthroughs at some point in time, if I can just get my act together. And until the next time.